Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Another episode of Clone Wars has dropped, and it is a fun one. Where the last episode was burdened with setting up the private world of the Clone Wars, this one takes full advantage of the audience's expectations to set up some interesting plot twists. This allows for a slower-paced episode to build the relationship between Ahsoka, Trace, and Rafa. The first surprise is that Ahsoka is still hanging out with Trace and Rafa in their mech bay. The way she walked off screen and gone with a Trace had seemed final. However, reflection shows that she would still be hanging around. Her bike wasn't fully repaired by the end of the episode, and she had hardly worked enough to reimburse Trace for the use of her tools in mech bay. So episode 6 opens with Ahsoka using the mechanical skills she learned from her time as Anakin's Padawan to fix Trace's ship. And if you haven't already figured it out by now, there's going to be some pretty severe spoilers in this episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. So click away now if you don't want that. I will leave some surprises, though. So Rafa shows up to sweep them off on a dangerous job. There's a bit of action, a bit of intrigue, and more than a bit of danger, but primarily this story is about Ahsoka, about the outcast Jedi torn from her position of power and authority, finding herself struggling to survive in a world where things are not as she thought they were. For years, Ahsoka has served the cause of the Jedi, and through them the Galactic Republic. She has had legions of clones at her command. She was surrounded by competence and dedication. And if things went wrong, there was always Anakin to swoop in and pull her out of the fire, always Rex to come in with a battalion with guns blazing. Someone competent always had her back. But now she is on her own, and scene after scene drives that in. She has to convince people using her own skill and force ability. She has to face the consequences of her own actions without a Jedi Knight or clone army to back her up. And the people around her, the people she has chosen to rely on, who rely on her, keep making stupid, dangerous mistakes. From the clones to the Jedi to the militias she trained, Ahsoka has always been able to count on a general level of competence at least. But that simply doesn't exist in the wider world of the Coruscant underworld. It's not just the general population, as represented by Trace and Rafa, don't respect Jedi. They don't know who or even what the Jedi are. These people down here in the city, they're just trying to survive, to put food on the table and some credits in their pockets. The vast majority of the population doesn't care about the political situation that Ahsoka has devoted her life to preserving. And that political situation doesn't even seem to serve Trace and Rafa all that well in the first place. This episode isn't really about a pair of sisters taking on a sketchy job. It's about Ahsoka getting smacked in the face by reality again and again. It's about her learning the hard lessons that will forge her into the Fulcrum that the rebellion would pivot on. It's about her forming connections that will allow her to make use of even the most questionable elements of the scattered forces that would eventually come together to take down the Empire that hasn't even formed yet. This is, in short, world building after the fact. It is fascinating, but does this kind of post-facto development make for good storytelling? I enjoyed the episode overall, but I just couldn't quite get the same fun out of it as the previous seasons. Whether that would affect a new viewer watching it through for the first time without the mental baggage of the Rebels Ahsoka hanging over their heads, I don't know. Time will tell. Like every episode of every show that deals with these in-between time periods of established characters, they're again hampered by the fact that there can't be any huge plot twists. The plot armor for the characters you know are established is even stronger than usual, so the episode rather cleverly uses the audience's expectations against them in subtle ways. Plot corkscrews were in abundance. Things that take the story sideways, but in the end always lead it back to where it was headed. We are told we are going to Kessel and arrive at a lush tropical tower city. The sisters are met with elegantly disciplined royal guards. Until these scenes, I hadn't even realized how solid my mental image of Kessel was. Kessel is a mining planet. It's a corporate planet. It's not a place for royalty sipping expensive fluid from delicate glasses. That was an interesting subversion of expectations. It did, however, jerk me out of the story to recognize that my expectations had in fact existed and that they had been subverted by the story. So whether this is good storytelling is debatable. Another example is when Rafa, the cynical, practical Rafa, shows more practical faith in the Republic than Ahsoka does. The former Jedi, who has in the past infiltrated slaver rings, immediately recognized the spice miners for what they are, slaves. However, according to Rafa, the Republic doesn't allow slavery, so they can't be slaves, right? This acts like a slap in the face for Ahsoka, who falls silent and the show goes on. But the biggest plot twist comes at the end. I won't spoil it, but Clone Wars episodes just don't end that way, and that's probably what leaves the taste of this not being like the rest of the Clone Wars the most. An interesting plot twist there at the end of the episode, but is it really Clone Wars? So, I'd say the episode was worth a watch. It was an excellent character development episode for Ahsoka. It shows the process that forged her into Fulcrum. The episode had a few interesting twists. It was enjoyable, but ultimately rather forgettable. So what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Leave a like below if you agree with my analysis, and leave a comment blasting my comment like the Death Star if you disagree. Peace out, my wonderful viewers.